Well, hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of the 360 Experience podcast. I'm your host, Tim Braheem, and my conversation today is with a lady who I've gotten to know over the last year as a client, Katrinka Condie, and she is dynamic, she is heart-centered, and she is an extremely successful loan originator. And I think you're going to find out why in the episode today. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on Katrinka. She's located in Salt Lake City, Utah, and she has been in the business for only 7 years. Check out these numbers. In her third year in the business, 2020, she did 189 loans for 68 million. In her fourth year in the business, 2021, she did 170 loans for 73 million. Those are some awfully impressive numbers for somebody who hasn't been doing it very long. And we're going to be talking today about some different topics than perhaps in previous episodes of the 360 Experience. One of the things that you're going to experience very early on is an unplugged, unplanned role play, where I'm going to share my personal situation as it relates to my home. And I'm going to have Katrinka guide me through how she speaks to a client. And in that conversation, you're going to hear the infusion of empathy. You're going to hear some outstanding open-ended questions that she's going to ask me. And you're going to see how she builds trust and rapport and why her success is so high. She's also incredibly well scripted. And you're going to hear some of those success scripts in this conversation. Later on in the conversation, we're going to talk about how she built her confidence from having the knowledge of the credit scoring model from a previous career that she was in, along with a whole bunch of other things that she's working on presently in her life and in her business. This promises to be a terrific conversation with Katrinka. As always, before we get to the show, I'd like to remind you that we thrive on subscribers. So if you've not subscribed to the 360 Experience, I would ask that you please do so on whatever your favorite podcast channel is. If you are watching this on YouTube, please make comments and give us some likes and forward it on to others. And the same holds true for Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts. Now, without further ado, my conversation, friends, with Katrinka Condie. Hey, Katrinka.
Howdy. How are you?
That's a very Utah welcome. Howdy. I'm good. Good morning.
I'm great.
So
can't discount where I'm from, right?
No, of course not. Of course not. Well, I mean, if we discounted where you're from, we would be dissing hard on my wife, who's from the same place. So
Correct.
So in the introduction, I talked a little bit about your production numbers, and that you've been in the business for 7 years only, and you've done some very impressive numbers in a short period of time. And you continue to, even in a challenging market. So I guess, I mean, first, I just want to start. I know that you're humble, and I know that you're a grateful human being. And yet, at the same perspective, why do you think that you've been as successful as you've been in the short period of time that you've been in the business?
I personally attribute it to the humanity of what I bring to the client experience. Personally, I can't really attribute it to being the best at guidelines or the best at sales, but I do believe that I'm the absolute best at connecting, building trust, bringing the human nature side to it. And I think it's why I have raving fans. And I do believe that human connection, the heart-to-heart connection that people truly get from me is what has them coming back, has them referring clients back to me. The interesting part is, even if I lose a loan, say they decide to go with someone else, the number of those clients that actually refer friends, colleagues to me, even when I didn't do their loans, says something about the connection that I make up front in education.
Wonderful. That's a great launching point for us. So you're really shedding the light on something that I think as a friend and client that I'm passionate about and teach myself, which is that this is a people business at the end of the day. And I think that we can forget that. It's really easy as originators to get caught up in the commission amount, the amount of basis points we're making, the loan size, how many deals we've done, all of that. And we can really tend to forget at the end of the day that this is about relationship and connection. And the originators that I know that are super successful, especially in this market, are the ones that actually have the deep relationships, the loyalty that comes with those deep relationships. It's interesting what you highlight. I'm going to ask you a question. I have a strong opinion about this, but why do you think that you then at times get referrals from people who you didn't end up doing a loan for, but yet they referred someone to you?
From the very first phone call that I have with somebody, I feel like getting people to open up to me as a human being, tell me what their fears are, what they're most excited about in buying a home, really understanding what their life goals are and what matters to them, immediately starts off that conversation feeling totally different than anyone else that they've talked to. So if they're shopping, I don't get to I don't talk numbers in that initial call. I educate, I connect, I just try to understand what matters to them. So right out of the gate, it already feels different. And helping them understand how to meet their goals in challenging markets and solutions that we have. So what's really important to me on that very first phone call, we call it our dreams and goals call, is building that connection so that they trust me as an expert, that I know what I'm talking about, and that I'm actually listening to what their goals are. So by the end of that conversation, one of the questions I ask, if they haven't already voiced it themselves somewhere along the lines of, wow, this has been really helpful, is I will ask them, did you learn something new that you hadn't learned before this conversation? How did that conversation play out, and how did it feel is what I'm looking for. And most of the time they're like, wow, that was really impactful. I learned more than I ever thought I would by just calling to find out what programs that you have.
See, that's a really beautiful frame up, because what I'm hearing you say is you're taking the emphasis off of the thing that most people enter the conversation fixated on, which is the rate and the fees, and you're putting the emphasis on the feeling and the experience and the learning. And that's brilliant. And I went about it a different way as an originator, but I had a similar philosophy and process, which was my job is to get the conversation moved away from the subject matter of interest rate and fees as quickly as possible in the onset of that interaction, and transcend it into value-driven dialogue that has the person leaving going, wow, I just learned something. So you're doing the same thing, but what I really liked was that added element of what's the feeling that they have. That's really important. So this is obviously a very organic conversation, as all of my podcast episodes are. So you can say no. And if you say no, that's okay. We're not going to be angry with you. But how would you feel? It's actually an interesting time for me. I am pondering selling my home and going on a bit of an adventure. And that adventure would be to not know where I'm going to move to, which is a little scary because I'm a routine-oriented human being like many of us are. And yet at the same time, I think it's that season of my life to open up the door to experiencing something that's unknown right now. How would you feel about you and I just ad-libbing and doing a little mock dreams and goals call right now, where I play consumer and you play you? And I'd love to just hear the questions that you would ask me, and then we could kind of debrief on it afterwards.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, great. So
I'm down.
All right, so let's get started. You can lead the dialogue.
Yeah. Hey Tim, how are you?
I'm good. I'm a little nervous, about my situation, but hopefully you'll help me clear some things up here.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the sum total of all I know about your goals so far is that you're about to embark on a new adventure. You're considering selling your house, but you really don't know what that next step is. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, I'm locked in at 2.625 on a 10-year fixed with 8 years left, and a property tax base that is, quite low compared to the existing value of the property because of how much things have gone up since I've bought the house 7 years ago. And everywhere I look, it's like the unilateral financial move is a big downgrade in the house and in the location. Um, so yeah, it's a little bit confusing, but I feel like it's probably time for me to take the next step.
Well, that house is a great investment and it's obviously building you wealth. So what is the primary motivating factor that is launching you into this adventure? And
Yeah.
really, what are your goals? Because there's more to life than just a loan and an asset. I mean, we got to live, we got to seek out our dreams. So what's really driving you?
I have an extraordinary amount of equity in this home. I'm probably at about a 15% loan to value, which is way too, way too low. I don't really have the ability I could do a HELOC or something like that, or take out a new first, but then the rate would be astronomically high. So that doesn't make any sense. I feel vulnerable. I'm very blessed. I live on a hillside overlooking the ocean. I can hear the waves when I go to bed at night. And yet it rains. It's been raining a lot here in Southern California the last couple of years. And every time it rains a lot, I get nervous. And location wise, it's a bit isolated. And I live, really right above Pacific Coast Highway. So there's a lot of traffic in the summertime. Kind of feels a little bit like I live above a freeway. And I miss being in a quiet neighborhood. I miss having a little bit more of a usable backyard. I miss being a little bit closer to activities, golf courses, things like that. It's been nice living here for the 4.5 years that I've lived here, but it's not the ideal circumstance, especially for when my wife and stepkids come to visit. I mean, it's fine when it's just Liz and I, but when my stepkids come, it's not a kid house. It's an adult house. I mean, look, the reality of it, Katrinka, is it's a bachelor pad. I mean, and I'm not a bachelor anymore. And when I bought it, it's a chick magnet pad. It's not my life anymore. So, yeah. So, but when I look to other areas, the areas I'm super spoiled, right? I mean, I lived in Southern California my whole life. I love the beach. I love the climate, but I also spent a lot of time in Costa Rica, and this house is empty a lot of the time. So it's a big amount of my net worth in this home that I use maybe 8 months out of the year. Feels somewhat impractical too. I know that I'm vomiting a lot on you right now, but those are kind of some of my circumstances.
It seems to me that you are somewhat emotionally attached to just having a lower interest rate on a mortgage, and you're a little bit fearful to get rid of that. But it also sounds like you need to potentially access the equity that you have in that home to take the next step in life. Yes? Am I on?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I think I'm emotionally getting to the point where I'm willing to give up the 2.625.
Have you considered keeping the property as an investment, or you have no interest in holding on to it? Do you actually want to use the equity?
I want to use the equity. I'm at an age in my life where I don't really want to have so much of my net worth in an equity in a home. I'd rather downsize a little bit, have a little bit less financial responsibilities. I mean, this house costs a lot of money to keep up. I mean, a plumber comes over and they see my house and they automatically triple the amount of the quote. It's like one of those things, where it's like, oh, well, this guy can afford it. Everything costs a lot. The gardener, everybody. So I want to simplify my life a little bit, I think.
Oh, I totally understand those goals. That's absolutely worthwhile. So what's your biggest fear in selling it then? What's holding you back?
Excellent question. That I won't like the next place that I move to as much as I like this house.
Okay, that's fair. But it also understands that this current house has quite a bit of limiting factors.
It does.
Okay.
It has a lot of great aspects to it. Like, it's such a great house that I actually never leave here. And it's a bit pathetic. Like, I never leave the house. I mean, I could go like 4 days in a row without even driving my car. And it's not because I'm walking everywhere. It's because I just don't leave the house. So I like the house a lot, but I feel vulnerable. I guess that at the end of the day, I feel vulnerable with this much equity, and there's fires and mudslides and all that kind of stuff in areas like this. And I'm just like, I don't want to lose sleep over that kind of stuff anymore.
Yeah. So unexpected events in the future could drop the hammer on you, and you're just kind of dreadfully pending when that may potentially happen.
Yes. Yes. Very much so. Dreadfully pending is a good phrase.
Yeah. I mean, that's an absolute fear that is valid. I would highly encourage you to, instead of focus on that, just focus on what the future goal is that you're trying to achieve. More peace, maybe not being over a highway, ditching the bachelor pad, which is kind of the last chapter of your life, and considering opening up to the next adventure.
Yeah.
More quiet, serene place. I mean, you can pretty much do whatever you want with the equity that you have in this home. And I think what I'm finding with a lot of borrowers right now that have mortgages at very low interest rates is they're a little emotionally attached to that. And they're failing to see that the lowest interest rate really isn't always the greatest mortgage strategy, but really developing the best strategy, knowing that it could be a short-term problem. I don't know if you plan on paying cash for the next house or if you plan on financing some, because it sounds like you have a decent amount of equity. But we only have so much life to live. And the human experience has so much to do with what we call home and the experiences that we have in that home. And it sounds like your home you love when you're there alone, you choose not to leave, but you also have your wife and the kids that are coming, and it's not really conducive to that. So do you feel like that the next adventure, the next house, wherever you choose to land, will provide a greater life experience for you and your kids, your wife's kids?
That's definitely the goal. I mean, I think you've helped synthesize what the goal is to find a place that is more conducive to this next chapter in my life and feels like home. I think that's a really important thing to me. And the fact that I don't know where that is, and that I kind of have to take the leap of faith and sell this house and then find the right place afterwards is a little scary. But that's the adventure part, right? Like, I mean, that's like the stepping into the unknown part. So yeah, I think you did a great job of synthesizing that.
Yeah. Maybe it's my age and maybe it's just getting a little bit older, but the financial investments we have can open up massive opportunities for us. And if you're just willing to keep your eye on the target, focus on what the goal is, that's part of the fun of finding the next house. It's a total blast to find out where you want to land and where you call home next, but sky's the limit for you. I don't know why you'd be so concerned about holding on to something that may not be providing the greatest joy, especially at this age of your life and this stage of your life. So as far as how you choose to make that next step, whether you choose to pay cash or finance it, have you even considered what your plan is there? Because
yeah, I think that
there's a financial burden on the current property you have.
I think it would be wise to finance some portion of the next acquisition with a very hefty down payment. I don't want to take on a bigger mortgage than is necessary. I just would want to maximize my write-off capabilities.
Yeah, totally understand. What would be really fun to show you though is we put together a total cost analysis for all of our borrowers. It's a pretty robust financial presentation that will detail for you when you have large sums of cash like this and you're considering a very large down payment, how are we able to grow your wealth and maximize that wealth over time? Some people think they just want to pay cash for a home, and that's not always the greatest long-term financial benefit, but really diversifying where you take the proceeds from the sale of California and what you choose to do with that. We typically wrap in your financial advisor if you have one. If you don't have one, I would love to connect you with a trusted advisor that I have and really see how we can take the proceeds from California and grow the most maximum wealth over a certain period of time. So whether we invest it in one avenue, put some in the house, maybe dump a little bit of liquidity into like a high yield savings or something like that. But the goal is to make sure that we're hitting your financial needs on the future payment, that it feels doable for you, but also growing your wealth. How far off are you from retirement? Like, how much longer do you want to work or foresee yourself working?
I don't, first of all, I do have a financial advisor. So thank you for the offer. Secondly is I was fortunate enough at a much younger age to actually retire for a period of time and learned a lot from that experience, which is that life is about expansion and creation. So I don't foresee myself retiring, quote unquote, anytime, maybe ever, but certainly not in the near future. But I do want to have the freedom to work the schedule that I want to work and to do the things that I want to do. And that's what, downsizing a little bit and having a little bit more liquidity in my bank account just gives me the peace of mind at night when I look at my cash flow from my investments versus my expenses. It just feels like now I'm really free to do whatever I want. Like I can choose into anything. Right. And it doesn't really matter as long as the only thing that matters is that I'm doing what I love doing.
Yeah. That freedom is an absolute beautiful thing to have. And one of the common things that I do ask my clients when they're trying to decide where to invest or how much to loan on the next property is consider this question. You don't have to have an answer to it right now, but maybe consider having a conversation with your wife on what is going to make you sleep the soundest at night. Is it low payment? Is it liquidity? Is it having the right financial investments? And I would encourage you to have that conversation with your wife. And then let's kind of work into this backwards on the payment that you want to have and the potential cash flow from distributions that you could have if you invest, and find that perfect sweet spot for you where you guys are comfortable on cash flow versus liabilities.
Beautiful. Let's hit timeout. Let's go off script here. So I want to just make some comments. First of all, fantastic job. That's the first thing that I want to say.
Thanks.
And I just want to extract some needles from the haystack here. Thought you did an amazing job of getting me into feeling what I want rather than cerebrally thinking what I want, because frankly, that's where I get locked up, is in my head. But if I do this, then what about that? Versus what's the feeling that you want to have? What's the experience that you want to have? Bringing it back to my wife and finding that sweet spot at the end here was really fantastic, because it also it serves me and displays a part of your value proposition, which is you're going to help me find that sweet spot. Referencing the total cost analysis and being able to do a robust financial breakdown. And notice for the listener here, never was rate discussed. And I think that other than my existing 2.625, which I think is also noteworthy, you kind of got me away from even thinking about that right now and thinking more about what's the ideal home that I want to be in, what's my ideal scenario, et cetera. I love the fact that you tried to convince me or subtly convince me to talk to your financial advisor, trying to tee up an opportunity for a referral to an outbound financial advisor. The one small miss, and maybe you would have circled back to it if I didn't cut it short, but there's so much more to talk about in this episode of the 360 Experience, so I didn't want to spend the whole time on me, is I would suggest that if I say to you, I have a financial advisor, that you seize that opportunity to say, wonderful, I would be more than happy to have a call with him or her. It could be a three-way call or just me calling them directly to go over the numbers with them and to help cumulatively or together figure out what that sweet spot is. Because there's an entry point there for you to get an introduction to a financial advisor.
Yep.
Really wonderful job, which I think I'm glad that we did that, Katrinka, because it really encapsulates the value proposition that you bring. We started with, why do you think it is that you get referrals from people who don't actually do a loan with you? I want to add to that too, by the way. for the listener's benefit and for your benefit, I think that at least 50% of the time when someone does a loan, at the end of that loan, they're unhappy for one reason or another. They didn't get the rate they thought they were going to get. The fees were higher than they expected. They didn't get return phone calls as promptly as they wanted, or things that had nothing to do with the lender and they're blaming the lender for it. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons as to why people are unhappy. So if you create a lasting impression, if you show that you care, if you take the time to ask a lot of great questions like you did, connect, get a feel for what's important to me. Even if I don't go with you, I'm going to remember how you made me feel. And if I'm upset with who I did go with instead of you, and I do have an opportunity to make a referral to somebody, I'm probably going to refer to the person that I didn't go with who made me feel good. And why close that window of opportunity? So wonderful, wonderful work there. Do you have anything you want to add to that before we kind of segue a little?
That's honestly what it's all about to me. It probably started from my background in history and nursing of like first do no harm. My heart's just racing. I just care so much for people. And my focus is really on life. I feel like my purpose is to elevate people. That doesn't always mean they go with me. But if I have an opportunity to teach, educate, elevate, and let people know that there are individuals in our industry that really, truly care about their success as human beings and as a family, that they can achieve their long-term financial goals, that is really what is at the heart of me. And I have so much to give. And so whatever I need to do to help them feel from me that caring, that humanity, that my willingness to serve, I feel honored to be chosen by clients who choose to partner with me for a long time. And that's really at the heart of who I am. Sometimes I say I probably get a little bit too emotionally invested because I get those exciting nerves when they submit an offer. They call me and tell me it's accepted, and we're hooting and hollering and screaming, and I'm running around my office just feeling the same emotions with them and that excitement. But then also on the other side, feeling their fear and sensing their trepidation, sensing their pause on certain questions. And that's where I dig. How can I make you feel comfortable in this aspect of the loan? One of my biggest things is there should never, ever be a surprise when buying a home. If things change, you swallow the frog early, you call and you talk about it, and you own and run the transaction like a pro so that there isn't surprises. When somebody gets to the end, I don't have that experience, Tim, that we get to the end and 50% are dissatisfied. I have a hard time even thinking of one recently that has even been the case. I feel like I have raving fans and I create new friends. And that matters to me.
I want to comment on a couple of things that you've shared here. I'm going to give you the second question first for you to ponder, and then I'm going to make some comments for those listening to consider. What you described and the emotions that came up for you is that of an empath. And that is a superpower that, if catalyzed correctly, can be used to be more successful. I mean, if people feel that you care about them, then they're going to care about you. I would imagine that there are people listening that, and I used to fall into this category, for sure, when I was an originator, that just say, well, but I don't feel that way. Like, I'm doing this to make more money. And that's where my focus is. I think I fell into that category as an originator. It's interesting because, like, you're in Leadership 360. You were just in Costa Rica. If you can go back the 3 months that it was since we were there, I think that you probably would really be able to realize that, like, when I'm in that living room with all of you, at the Gottwald house and we're having our meetings, I'm in an empathic state. Like I really do care about all of you and want to serve and help you in every way that I can. And it took me having to learn that as a skill. And I think for some people it comes naturally, and for others it has to be learned. And the question is going to be like, what would you say to somebody who says, but I just don't feel that way? Before you answer that, and as you ponder that, the other thing that that I think that you have identified that is very noteworthy for everyone to really take in is, at the end of the day, if we are thinking transactionally, feel it. And if we're truly serving, they're going to feel that. And yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that for now and turn it over to you, because I'll probably have more to say after hearing what you have to say. But let's go back to the question. If you could talk to me 20 years ago and I said to you, yeah, but Katrinka, when I'm on the phone with a client, I don't feel that emotion for them. Like, that's my honest truth. Like, I just want to get the deal. What would you say to me? How would you coach me on that?
Great question. I would say probably the quickest way to bring it home would be when I'm on the phone and I'm trying to advise somebody on one of the largest financial decisions that they're going to make, I actually make decisions and ask questions and guide as if that person were my brother or sister, or as if that person, like depending on their age, my mom or dad. And so when I'm thinking about, say, someone who's, approaching retirement and they don't have the young kids at home, I'm asking questions that are like, well, what's the next step for you? Like, what's the most important thing to you? Have you had the opportunities to travel? Because I'm thinking about what would have been important to my parents in that same situation versus if they're young, they're just starting to raise a family. I know what that feels like, and I know what the worries and concerns I had were on buying my first house. And so trying to give advice in a really human nature, like I don't ever think about, I had some really good advice given to me my very first year in the business. And one of the LOs I worked with said, if you always focus on the commission and the loan amount and how much you're going to make on a deal, you're going to lose the ability to truly listen and meet your client's goals.